We are at the 2023 Annual Summer Forum. The forum was started or maintained by the Nantucket Community Association for years. Charlie Walters is back here as our, I almost said co-sponsor, Charlie, but collaborator in the creation of the forum. This year, it's entirely in the hands of the Civic League, and we welcome you all. In the late 19th century, there were several groups or committees, some more formal than others. One was called the Civic League. The other was called the Nantucket Improvement Association. In 1904, the Civic League organized, took on the role of the Nantucket Improvement Association, chartered, and we've been in business ever since. For the people up front, if you'll forgive me for just a moment. The Civic League says we have a mission. It's to preserve the island's resources, to improve the quality of island living, to educate, that's what we are here today, the public on island issues, and finally, to encourage participation in island government. If you've seen the program, we have two segments. The first is for select board, and then the second is for town departments. My role as moderator will be to introduce the leaders at the table, who in turn will introduce their colleagues. And then when we get to the question and answer period, I think I'm the one that's supposed to go like this and say, it's your turn. So up front, Dawn Hill Holgate, who's chair of our select board, and she will be going first. And next to her is Libby Gibson, our town manager, who will be organizing the second half of the program. Madam Chair, it's with you.
I always love it when I get to go first. My topic today, and obviously here to answer questions as well, is the strategic plan that the board started developing. I think it's been about 5 years. And the idea behind this strategic plan was to give some focus to all of the departments and to ourselves on how we could tie things back to what our most important goals were for the community, to sustain and protect what we all love about Nantucket. And we focused in on initially 3 areas, and we added 2 more during our yearly review process. And housing has been our number 1 priority. And I mean, what you'll realize is there are many other extremely important priorities, but they all in some way tie back to people having a decent place to live on the island, to be able to accomplish most else. Our second goal has been transportation. The importance there is, the number 1 complaint this time of year is traffic, and different ways to encourage people to get out of the single occupancy vehicle, get better transit service, improve the way we bike and walk, and other alternative modes. We've also focused on environmental leadership. These were the first of the 3 goals, and how we can, do an even better job protecting the island and sustaining the way we deal with our waste and coastal erosion and so forth. And then when we added efficient town operations so that we could streamline things in a better way, and improve technology and outreach. And we've been working on those things. And then the last is quality of life. And that ties into all of these goals of basically people living happily on Nantucket, and how we can really keep our community, you know, the place why we all came here in the first place. So we will be reviewing this again this year. Every time after an election, a few months in, we all sit down and reprioritize, see what we've accomplished, see if we want to move things around in terms of top priorities. And these goals, I mean, do not take away from the fact that we have other, you know, big things that we've been working on for a long time. I mean, one of my big focuses is solving the island home, the senior center. We are doing a lot of talking now about an indoor recreation center. And those things do all tie into our quality of life and sustainability of our community. So I think that I'm open to any questions on that, but who am I passing to?
Could you introduce the book?
Yes, I can do that. Tom Dixon is our newest board member, just elected in May. Matt Fee is our longest board member. How many years have you served in total?
You haven't been able to get rid of that.
Brooke Moore's in her second year. She is our vice chair. And Malcolm McNabb is in his first full term, but he filled Melissa Murphy's seat when she vacated it. And he was the chair of the Board of Health for quite a long time and is still on there now. And then we have our wonderful town manager, Libby Gibson, who has been with the town for, I'm not going to say how many years. Who am I passing to next?
It's a question and answer time, and I will call on people. May I ask that they be real questions? If you're editorializing, yes, we want to hear from you, but keep it modest in length. And then I will point out, perhaps to Dawnhill Holgate's dismay, every select board meeting has a moment in the agenda called public comment, where citizens or visitors to Nantucket may address the board. And so that's a good place for editorializing. Brooke Moore.
Can I ask, are we gonna do questions after each of us, or should we each present our topics and then do questions at the end?
That's up to your chair.
I think that's how we've normally done it. We've all spoken and then the questions have come out.
Fine.
Okay. So that's why I was asking who goes next.
Thank you.
Hi, guess what I'm going to talk about, everybody? Housing. Our number one priority, recognized across the community, is the number one challenge that we have. I'm going to just try to run through some achievements, goals, and future ideas, and try to just do it really quickly. There are some packets of a presentation that Tucker Holland did to the Finance Committee in the town meeting process that you're welcome to grab. That's where I'm drawing a lot of this information from, but I'm not going to give as much detail as in there. So in 2017, we had a little over 100 units of subsidized housing inventory dwellings, which represented 2% of our 10% requirement under Chapter 40B. Today, we're at 6.78% with 332 units and counting. The community has made enormous commitments, both financially and in terms of accepting the development of affordable housing from a political and community commitment perspective in the years that I've been serving, which is started around then, 2017. We define housing as affordable for people making up to 100% area median income. And we've coined a new phrase because we know that's not enough. And we're using the word attainable housing, and that represents housing for people who make more than 100% area median income up to 240% area median income. And we're targeting housing in all those ranges as we move forward. in this process. Just to give you some numbers, currently 100% AMI here is about $136,000 a year, which makes 80% AMI for a family of four about $94,000 a year, and 240% AMI, $326,000 a year. And what we know is a family making $326,000 a year still can't afford to buy with a median home price at over $3 million. So support for housing at all these income levels is critical, both for town functioning, for our economy, and for quality of life. In the last few years, the voters have supported $67 million of funding up until this last town meeting, which is a combination of budget and debt exclusions. And we've done things like acquire land, 31 Fairgrounds Road, 135, 137 Orange Street, Vesper Lane, Bartlett Road, White Street. All of those properties have been acquired and are ready for development. We've subsidized the creation of housing, both from Housing Nantucket and for Habitat for Humanity. Habitat has put up 5 homeownership dwellings for people at very low income in the last several years. We've acquired individual units on Somerset Lane and at 30 Acres Drive. We've also accelerated construction at Richmond Great Point. They came to the Affordable Housing Trust and said, we have a construction timeline that spreads out over the next decade or more. With some financing from the town, we can accelerate the construction of the rental units that were already approved. And in addition, with a subsidy, we can buy down more affordable units. The Richmond Great Point development is 25% affordable as their original planning board approval, but we've increased that number by, and I don't have the number off the top of my head, probably 15 or 20 more affordable units through this financing structure. And it's a combination of loans and grants. So some of that money will cycle back to us. So coming soon to your is the development at 6 Fairgrounds Road, also known as Tacoma Green. That was held up for 5 years due to neighborhood appeals. And we won that appeal, but by the time that happened, of course, we were in a pandemic construction cycle and the cost of construction there escalated by millions and millions of dollars. So it's taken us about 2 years, the developer and the town, to set aside the additional funding need to move that project forward, and that they were allocated additional low-income tax credit financing from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And so that project is scheduled to proceed later this year, early next year. So that's 64 new rental units priced from 50% area median income up to market rate. So that'll be 64 families, local, all year round families. And then of course, we've sponsored the development of 31 Fairgrounds Road, which is 22 rental units to be owned and managed by Housing Nantucket. Those will all be occupied year round as well, from 50% AMI up to 150% AMI. And then, of course, this year, the voters approved a $6.5 million permanent tax override, which is the long-term consistent funding that the Affordable Housing Trust and the Select Board has been seeking for years. This means we can plan and we can really take on some new initiatives, particularly in homeownership. And in that arena, we're going to be developing deed restriction programs. And I'll give you a quick example. I'm a senior, I'm aging out, my wealth is all in my home. I'm having a hard time paying my bills. The town can acquire a deed restriction from me in exchange for which I agree to sell my home only to a year-rounder. And that's a deed restriction in perpetuity. In exchange for that, I'm paid a percentage of my assessed value in cash on which I can live through my aging years. That kind of program will help us keep year-round units forever. So we won't be building our way out of the housing problem. We'll be acquiring deed restrictions on houses that are already occupied year-round and making sure they stay that way forever. So that's some of the use of the funding that y'all approved at town meeting, which it's critical. We continue to run our closing cost assistance program for deed restricted home buyers, and our covenant formation assistant, which is a small loan and technical assistance to create a covenant lot repayable on the sale of the lot. There's a lot here, guys, and I'm taking more than my few minutes, but this is really important. So thanks to the voters, thanks to the community for the commitment. The trust and the select board are working hard to make sure that we're creating housing that we can be proud of, that will house the people who are living and working here, and also help with recruitment and retention for town employees, which is a something you're going to hear, I'm sure, from our town manager. So sorry to take so much time, but it's a lot. Good news, a lot.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I am going to cover, is that a little better? Okay. I'm going to cover this morning short-term rentals, which has been an interesting topic on Nantucket and for many other communities in the Commonwealth and throughout the nation, for sure. We started, or the Finance Committee, the Planning Board, and the Select Board designated a short-term rental work group last October, which was 10 of us, nine voting and 1 non-voting from the Board of Health. And that was made up of John Kitchener, Jim Sulzer, and Karen Zadico, 3 at-large members, Dave Iverson from the Planning Board, Peter Schaefer from the Finance Committee, Kathy Baird from Nantucket Together, myself from the Affordable Housing, the Housing Stakeholders Group, and Peter Kahn from the non-voting taxpayers, and Julia Lidner from Act Now. And so we began our work to come up with a bylaw or a series of bylaws for special town, or what was originally going to be annual town meeting this year. Our work and gathering the data took longer than we expected because it was needed to be it was the beginning of the data collection. Basically, there was no base to start with. So the town hired through an RFP a data consultant, which gathered data on short-term rentals on Nantucket, and also the NARAB data, working with Matt Haffenreffer, who is the data consultant with Process First. He worked with NARAB, with Penny Dye, and the Donahue Institute at UMass to get their report. So there are 2 final documents which are posted on the short-term rental work group's website, on the town's website. And so I'm going to kind of go through, this is all in our select board packet. We are discussing this week as an agenda item, the final draft bylaw that was written up. And I'm just going to go through very quickly, but definitely look at our packet or ask any questions, anything specific. I'm also happy to stay after a little bit if you have any questions about the specifics of how we came to it. So our goal was to reach consensus, which was considered 7 of 9 of us. We did reach consensus. We got 7 of 9 of us for our final draft bylaw, and which also has to go to the select board and then to the, again, special town meeting, and however the voters feel about that in November. We held many meetings over almost 10 months. We developed a set of policies. So we came out with a zoning bylaw and 2 general bylaws. And then there are a couple which we were calling a la carte, just kind of loosely, because one is the community impact fee, and that per town council could not go on the general bylaw part of it. So that's one part of our package. We have these 2 data final PDFs, reports of all the data sets that Matt, the Process First, has got together. And we heard from many other communities. We talked to Honolulu, Scottsdale, Palm Springs. We talked to some places on the other towns on the Cape and what they were doing. Again, our group was subject to open meeting law, as we were an official committee. We were run also by Stacy Smith from Consensus Building Institute, who was hired to be our facilitator. And they also we didn't have minutes, we had meeting summaries. So those came out and those were all posted on the website. And so people followed along. We had many members of the public email us, many, dozens, hundreds probably, letters, comments, et cetera, on the process. And some people even attended our 2 in-person meetings, which were 10 hours each. So that was good. So I'm going way over time, kind of getting bogged down in process here, but we had in this report to the select board that we will discuss tomorrow night, there are 6 purposes for the bylaw itself. And then there are the general bylaw provisions, which which would go into effect after the bylaws if they pass special town meeting and then be approved by the Attorney General's office. And though I'm happy to give a copy or email a copy of those to anybody, but again, they're in our packet. And that is also accompanied with a zoning bylaw that would have to, both of them have to pass. The zoning bylaw needs 2/3 and the general bylaw needs half at town or 50 plus one to be in effect. So this is kind of like Matt's topic, impossible to do in 5 minutes or so. And there'll be more coming. I'm sure the work group and the town and members of the work group are going to get out there and talk about what we did and whatever also comes out of the select board. But what I would want the public to know as a member of the work group is we worked really hard. We spent a lot of time on it. We discussed many different ways of doing this, and we tried to come up with the best balance of something that seemed to work for the community, something that could reach consensus in our work group, and something that we thought that the community would accept, the voters would accept at special town meeting. So with that, I'll pass it over to Matt on his topic.
Hi. Hi. I sat in on what is it? Non-voting meeting the other day. I just sat on Zoom and listened, and inevitably the big topic was transportation and all the, there's too many cars and too many trucks, and sort of the consensus of that group is that it was, the workers, and there's too many trucks driving around and too much work. If you talk to the Islanders, we're going to blame the summer residents, and, the workers are going to blame the Islanders. I mean, it sort of goes around and around, so I have a question. How many people here took NRTA? Raise your hands today. How many took the NRTA? Who took the bus today? Downtown? 1, 2. How many walked? Okay. How many rode their bike? How many took single vehicle cars or took a vehicle? All right. The majority took cars, if you look, and then more walked and took alternatives than I expected. But, we have to look in the mirror on this issue. The problem is us. And in my mind, I tried to limit cars, via town meeting. We voted it twice. It's being studied at the planning department. And, and it's still in the planning process. It's still one of our goals. But, and so some of the people talk, we need more roads. Well, we're going to lose roads to coastal resiliency. We're going to lose roads to sea level rise. So I've sort of changed my tune on limiting. I don't think we can even limit anymore, but I think we have to figure out what is an alternative that's better than the car. And a couple of years ago, I was in Telluride, Colorado, and they had 2 towns that were linked by buses, and they took the buses away and they put a gondola from one side to the other, and the traffic went down completely. There was no traffic up and down, this sort of dangerous road. And it was pleasant. The downtown was pleasant. There was parking. It was vibrant. The other side of the mountain had grown. So I look and say, what is our gondola? What are we going to do as a community that's going to be better than driving cars? One of the things I hear a lot of times, and I don't have the answer to that, but that's what we need to start thinking longer term and bigger vision toward, in making incentives, putting things in place that lead us to that solution. If we aren't, the cars are going to ruin our quality of life. They already are. It's the one big complaint when we hit July and August every year. Now it's June and September a bit. So we have to really, and I think we do a good job of doing some small things and making a little bit better, but this needs, this needs a whole different view. We need to look at this from a bigger situation, bigger, sort of macro perspective. One of the things you hear a lot of times is, well, how did you know? We never could have predicted this. Well, in the early 2000s, yeah, we did predict this. We had consultants here for the comp plan. They told us we would have, we hit X amount of cars, this is what would happen. And it is actually what has happened. And the areas that has happened are the areas they said it was going to happen, which is Old South Road and Fairgrounds and Surfside and Nobody Farm. We knew the trouble spots 25 years ago, and they're still there. And so I think, that, you know, that you can study this stuff, you can analyze it and find ways, find ways to improve it. But I think the big thing is, how do we make something that's more agreeable? Part of it, I believe myself, is paid parking. This board has voted for, putting in place demand management parking downtown. What that would do is that would provide, it would keep some cars from parking 6-8 hours a day downtown. It would open up the neighborhoods that get overrun with cars now that are parking downtown, and it would provide about $2 million a year to improve NRTA, improve bike paths, improve sidewalks, et cetera. So that you have to, these things are all related. You can't say, oh, we don't want to do paid parking, but we want to have less cars. You have to think about it holistically, which is what I hope we will do over the next couple of years, and start to make some inroads on it. It's sort of one of our biggest challenges. We can't build 100+ homes a year and renovate another 50 and think that we're going to build ourselves out of that problem. So hopefully we will, as a board, tackle it in the near future. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you here today. I've been asked to talk a little bit about the Board of Health and maybe some of the health issues on the island. Our Board of Health is appointed by the Select Board, independent board. We all know some of the things the board does. For example, obviously healthcare, disease control. We go back to those horrible days of COVID where we have a meeting like once a week. You're very familiar with that. And that's when I noticed our television audience started to peak. And I think one of the things I don't necessarily like about Zoom and Zoom meetings, it does include more people. I can remember back years ago at the Board of Health, we passed an alternative design septic systems that were going to cost people $50,000, $60,000, and there'd be nobody there, 1 or 2 people. We had a discussion about rooster noise, and the room was packed, absolutely packed. So I think I'm feeling a little better that people are getting a little more involved. You all know that we do about health. We have a lot of discussion about food supply and safety, but you also have to realize one of the other regulations, very interesting enough, includes regulation of summer camps, swimming pools, fertilizer, pesticides. The legal aspects of what the board is responsible for are significant. It really affects all of our lives, everything we do, and we're trying to keep this island healthy. If you look at most statistics of this island, we actually are a pretty healthy island. We have a couple issues. Obviously, mental health is something that we have to do a lot more work on. Tick-borne disease is always, unfortunately, going to be a problem for us. But I have to really compliment the health department for some of the great work they've done this year. And now also it's actually the health department and human services on the issue of mental health. They've worked hard with the behavioral initiative working group, and a lot of the activity funded by the Community Foundation are getting to a way to maybe perhaps better coordinate our mental health activities on the island. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm sorry I use that word, the Board of Health is involved in short-term rentals as well. I see Roberto shaking his head, or laughing or crying. I'm not sure which. Both. That's been a little, we didn't kind of get it off on time, but it's getting there with time. I think one of the other great things the department has done this past year is we now have a public health nurse, which is something we haven't had for a long time. And she's already going out and doing all kinds of great activities. When it's Salt Marsh, for example, the Ask a Nurse program, and you're going to see more and more of that. The health department now, I think, really has the staff that it needs. It's up to staff. We now have doing the things we really have to do. And all those lists of various things I said, the health department and the Board of Health are responsible for. I think they can focus a little more on it. I think it's been a pretty good year. I think the health department is really getting a handle on things, and I could go on and talk forever, but I only have 5 minutes. I mean, maybe like our moderator, like at the beginning of class, you just start talk and talk and talk. I used to do the same thing when I taught. So if you have any questions about the Board of Health, the Health Department, or the health of the island or any of our issues, I'll be glad to take them in the question period.
My congratulations to the board members. You are actually 2 minutes ahead of the printed schedule.
Does that mean I have 2 more?
No, it means I'm going to address Brooke with a piece of personal history. In 1800, the widow Stratton died, and the town bought her house for $100, such sums received previously. Brooke, the town supported the widow Stratton with cash payments, in turn for which the equivalent of a conservation deed. She sold the house to the town, who then sold it on and such. So, and Matt, 1878 to 1918, the Nantucket Railroad. Okay, and with that, Chair Holgate, with your permission, we'll call for questions. Oh, good. We can go to our next segment. There are no hands raised. Arthur Tiger. If you would wait for a microphone. While it's coming up, we are videoing and recording this session, and it will go up on YouTube. So the microphones are important.
Thank you very much. I'm a retired orthopedic surgeon, and I came here about 40 years ago. We bought a house on the South Shore, and I'm very concerned about what is happening
Arthur.
on the South Shore, because there seems to be a great experiment going on. We're going to be visited by hordes of wind turbines in the South Shore that are going to take a heck of a long time to build. And along with the building of those wind turbines, we're going to have various inconveniences. Number one, noise. Number two, lights. Number three, it will be the equivalent of putting in a airport there.
Arthur, as I said before, an elaborate editorial, I would say for
It's not
but let's,
elaborate.
no, if you
Please.
could get to the point of your question,
I will, if you
please.
Thank you. And I'm concerned how it's going to affect the South Shore, because we're the only area that is going to be surrounded in part by wind turbines. And those wind turbines are not going to be a very peaceful occurrence. It's going to affect the marine life. It's going to affect the beaches. It's going to affect everything out there. I mean, this town closes down a whole beach because of eggs from the plovers, but they're allowing this horrendous development to occur. Now, I'd like to know,
Arthur, thank you. I think we all share your concern. So let's give them time for an
number one,
answer.
how many of you live on the South Shore? And number two, why was it approved?
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, if you would nominate whoever it is you choose to answer.
Matt would like to take that question.
Yeah, I think I'm either the bravest or the dumbest for this. We didn't have a choice. This is state and federal jurisdiction that is doing this. We as the town, Liberty can't decide to put windmills up or take windmills down. It's not in our purview. We were making comments, and they were not really being heard at the beginning of the process. We've since hired cultural heritage partners, and they are working on our behalf. And that, you know, and it's to address some of the things that you're saying. This is one of the, you know, one of the only issues in the federal government that's got broad support from both sides of the aisle. The Republicans and the Democrats are both supporting this very strongly. At least, you know, at least they, you know, so I think, you know, we have to, both are, there's not a lot of Republicans up here in mass, but, yeah. You're a brave man, but no, but, at the federal level, this is very well supported. And I think we've got people working on behalf to try to minimize it to the best we can. We have some people here that can talk a little more knowledgeably than I can, if there's other questions about this. We've accepted mitigation. We've accepted money from Vineyard Wind from the first person and we put it into a wind fund that will be used to help mitigate some of these issues here on island. The first pass, we were being offered $300,000, the equivalent of 300,000. And then, since then they've committed the equivalent of millions. And so for that one project, and so that, that was the best that we could do at the time.
Just note, one of the things we did negotiate that we were able to get them to move them one row for. One thing we did negotiate through that process was that we were able to get them at least moved back one row, which was pretty significant in terms of the size of them, a little bit further away, and the lighting and the color was a
Will-
very big concern.
Arthur, will let people take their turn.
So I'd like to address this from the perspective of what is actually practical and possible, right? I wish we had control over everything that happened in the United States of America that had an impact on Nantucket. We don't. As a select board member, one of the things that I've learned, having been in this position now for just over a year, is our government has different layers of decision-making authority, funding authority, et cetera. And sometimes we are put in a position where we seek the best compromise possible under the circumstances presented before us. And my understanding of the negotiation on the wind farm is that our voice was tiny in a very loud cacophony of voices on alternative energy. And that accepting money, in my mind, is not saying that we don't recognize that there are negative consequences to things. It's about being pragmatic about how do we mitigate those, what can we get for the community in exchange for the thing that is going to have an impact. And it's going to have a positive impact on alternative energy, and it has potentially a negative impact on a view from the South Shore. We can only control what we can control, folks. That's the reality. We could fight to the end and lose and end up with nothing. Or we can compromise and get as much gain for the community as possible, moving it a row back, getting a mitigation fund. Accepting a compromise, frankly, is the hallmark of governance, and holding firm to an ideal is sometimes the wrong position to take. And I think this is a really good example of that. And I just wanted to share that it's very hard to make these decisions under those circumstances. And that's what we're tasked and elected to do.
Thank you, Board Member Moore. Now, other questions? Yes, Carol. Oh, go microphone, please. Up front, Carol.
Thank you. I know you addressed quality of life, and I would like you to re-review the policy of construction in the summer. I know that your position has been, it's a very short season, and that there is a lot of push to get construction projects done. But in Bram Point today, we have 12 major construction projects within a 2-block area in which we would like to see some relief. It would be nice to see this select board re-review the hours of construction in the summer and perhaps give us relief having no construction on Saturday and Sunday, and evaluating the number of building permits that happen in a neighborhood so that you're much more sensitive to how it impacts quality of life for everybody in the summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you have some colleagues and fans, but I think it's time for the board to respond.
We have done some review in recent times on making changes to the noise bylaw. And that's really where this falls. What I will say quite honestly is that the people who vote at town meeting, so many of them make their living off of construction. It's a major driver of our economy. It's not the easiest thing to get a very large change passed. So we have made some more minor changes. And in terms of limits on number of permits in certain areas, that's a very hard thing to put on people in terms of their property rights. And the entire island has tried a building cap before, and it actually had a really detrimental opposite effect. So sometimes those are not necessarily the answers,
Madam
but I
Chair,
think the
if I may add,
discussion is valid.
we recently revised the town regulation on noise after a substantial study. I guess the happy news is nobody was happy with the report, which meant it probably was a reasonable compromise.
That's what I mean. You can make minor changes.
Yes, right next to you.
Thanks for serving the town, by the way. And just a question about electric bikes. I don't know enough about them, but I know there are some that look like a bike with a small motor. That's great. But some of them almost seem like a scooter or a small motorcycle, and the bike paths have become kind of an alternative roadway. And I was wondering if there's any way to distinguish between the two of them. Some of them go as fast as a motorcycle, so I don't know why they're not licensed as a motorcycle, so that the bike paths can be a little less treacherous for us who still pedal a bike. Thanks.
So I'll take this a little bit. Massachusetts, our bylaw has to fit within Massachusetts bylaw as well. So the two marry together. The State House is working on this topic. And Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is a priority for me personally, and it's an iterative process. We need the state is catching up with the technology. Government is always behind when new technologies come on. But I do know that there are different classes of bikes. That is already the case. They have different, whether they're pedal assist, whether they can go up to a certain speed, or whether they have a throttle. And so there are different classes, and they can be potentially regulated differently. I've witnessed what everybody's witnessed. I've had an e-bike for 4 years. I've used it. Mine is pedal assist. It won't go unless I'm moving my legs. That is not the case with some of these technologies. And it is something we need to address, and we are referring it to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee for review. There was a citizen warrant article at town meeting to ban them. It did not pass. And I believe that there is appropriate regulation to come. And then we also, I always say this, we have to be pragmatic about what is actually enforceable with the miles of bike paths and roadways that we have and the size of our police force. We can create a regulation and have expectation around enforcement. But I think when we craft regulations, we have to also be pragmatic about what's enforceable, what is realistically enforceable. I worry very much that kids aren't wearing helmets. There's a lot of things that concern me about this. So personally, this is a priority for me this winter as we watch the state move forward on regulating these bikes as well.
Board Member Moore and Chair Hill Holgate, you made a reference to Mike. We'd like to welcome Mike Burns, our returned traffic program manager, who's addressed many groups on electric bikes and scooters, their use on side paths, which I think is the current term for bike paths, and their misuse on sidewalks because they're not allowed on sidewalks. But he will be part of the second presentation and perhaps can add to what Board Member Moore just said. Other questions? We have one here. And was there one in the back? Okay.
Hi, I'm Mary Chalk and I live in Mattocket year-round. I want to talk about the wind farms and I just want to address, I want to talk about the wind farms and I want to address a comment from the board about it just kind of messing up our view on the South Shore a little bit and, you know, maybe some other concerns. But what I am really unhappy about and shocked is that these energy companies, these foreign energy companies, before they build their projects of 1,400 turbines, which will be off our South Shore, they have to ask permission by NOAA fisheries, from NOAA fisheries, to take our marine life, our sea mammals, our whales, our dolphins.
Ma'am, is there a question in
Right,
this?
I do. I just have to give it some background. Thank you. To take our whales, to take our dolphins, our porpoises. The total takes so far they have been granted to injure permanently or temporarily, destroy their habitat. They have granted over 700,000 to these wind companies in our oceans, over 700,000.
Question,
Great.
please.
So because our North Atlantic right whale, right, our whales, we're the whale island. I fell in love with nature living here. I fell in love with nature going to the Whaling Museum and listening to Stormy Mayo to teach us about our North Atlantic.
Ma'am, we're going to ask that the microphone be handed over unless you get to a question. Thank you. Question. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Try it.
I understand you entered into a partnership and you're bound to 4 of these companies, but is there a way to get out of this partnership? I think there are off-ramps so that you can join the representative, the local governments of New Jersey and the rest of the East Coast, whose local governments are fighting like hell to save their ocean. You know, a little 2-year-old crossed my path this morning and I just started crying because we're teaching our children to love our ocean, but we're leaving them behind in a dead ocean.
Do I gather that the
Steel.
question is, can we back out?
Can we back out? Can you start? Can we show solidarity with the
And
East Coast
time-
states that are
It's time
fighting?
for an answer. Thank you.
Yeah, the agreement we have is with Vineyard Wind. And that agreement is done. If there's future projects, those will be separate issues and we will deal with those separately as they come forward. And Lauren is, the Energy Office and the Wind Committee is already starting that and taking some of your concerns into consideration while we do this. So, so we can't back out, and I wouldn't recommend we back out of the Vineyard Wind at this point. But that doesn't mean that we aren't going to take a different stance or a tougher stance potentially on these next 2 or 3.
Thank you, Matt. I did promise one more question. We're reaching the scheduled time for this part.
Good morning, and thank you for all your great work. I too had 2 quick questions on the wind turbines, and one was consistent with the one that we just heard, and that is, can the projects be stopped? I guess the other question relates to, I guess it's 3 questions. What do we get? What does Nantucket benefit from this? And why don't we stop with that? Because I think we've had a lot on the wind turbines, but I just wanted to get your perspective on what we benefit from and if we can stop. Oh, sorry. My other question was relating to what I heard earlier. I apologize. It sounded as though some of the comments that were given earlier today indicated that the town of Nantucket can't do anything and that it was all handled on the state and national levels. And that really, I'd like to understand if that's the case, so that if people are concerned with the wind turbines, they should be taking this someplace else because Nantucket's hands are tied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Holly Backus has her hand up. Can she address this question?
No, I think it's time for an answer.
Yes,
You,
I'd like Holly Backus to answer that question.
oh, good.
Thank you. Holly Backus, Preservation Planner. Basically, the environmental laws of the United States require federal agencies to balance the environmental concerns with development and allow development. So as long as the environmental concerns are considered in an environmental impact statement and harm to historic properties are avoided, minimized, or mitigated. The biggest aspect I think that all Nantucket residents need to understand is they're encouraged to express their views directly to BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management, the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, and the Massachusetts Historical Commission, as well as to national and state environmental organizations that have so far declined to participate in environmental review to encourage them to reconsider their positions. Nantucket has to follow the law. And I think it's very important that the town, to understand that the town has always advocated for harm of avoidance and minimize, but our laws don't require this outcome. The town participated in these permitting reviews. Again, the only one so far that has a good neighbor agreement is Vineyard Wind. I think it's important that people are engaged. If they follow the town's work group page that we have, you can find a lot of information going on. And if the public is interested, one of our expert counsels from CHP will be at the NPDC meeting next Monday at 5 o'clock via Zoom. Thank you.
And thank you. Madam Chair, if I may, as we end this, now, as we end, Sheriff Perlman.
I am not very good at this. I'm Jim Perlman. I'm the sheriff. And Matt asked how people got here. I'm looking around the room. I'm wondering how many people in this room I've served eviction papers to. Anybody? So probably most of you or some of you don't know what I do. I'd say in the last 3 months, I've handed eviction papers to 60 or 70 people. So, you know, this is, I think everybody up at the table can appreciate what that is. But on the other hand, you know, there used to be, people used to say, last person in, put the chain up. In other words, at what point do we stop the building? Do we stop any kind of building? Because the island, obviously it can't support it. We have public safety that's short-handed, short budgeted, short-staffed, whatever. We have these things on the table for affordable housing. The project next to Fairgrounds Restaurant, 22 units, I believe. There are going to be 50 cars in that development. When the Surfside Crossing is built, 150 plus units, there are going to be 300 or 400 cars in that development. We've all been stuck in traffic. I was stuck in behind the day of the fire on the deck of the Nantucket Hotel, where one of the fire pits caught on fire. I was at the Rotary, and one of the firefighters in a public vehicle was coming around. I got on his tail to get through traffic. I don't know what my question is, but I don't know what the answer is either. When not everybody who's going to want to live here can live here. Does anybody have an answer to that? When does it end?
I think that's a very interesting valedictory comment. I would like to make one more as I thank the board members for their participation. I was secretary of the Fertilizer Application Advisory Group, And we got a substantial report on the sources of nitrate contamination in the harbor. The bulk, better than 50%, is atmospheric contamination. Well, if that's the case, why are we passing all kinds of rules on fertilizer? Because it's the one element that we know we can control. The second is septic systems. So fertilizer contamination represented, according to this report from UMass, about 10% of the nitrate contamination. 50% was atmospheric contamination. If you recall from junior high school science, our atmosphere is 79% nitrogen. When the air goes through high temperature combustion, the nitrogen becomes NO3, nitric oxide. And in the atmosphere, it becomes the nitrate. With the rain, it goes into the harbor. So one of the benefits in my mind, and I'm happy to talk with my colleagues afterwards, is that alternate energy that doesn't burn fossil fuels, whether natural gas, coal, or anything else. The only one that doesn't would be hydrogen, but that's generated through other kinds. So it's either nuclear or alternate if we want to reduce atmospheric contamination. And that's my answer. So let's give the board members a round of applause. Give them a moment to get down. And Libby, if you'd call your department heads. What? They don't get down? They're going to stay here. All right. Mr. Moderator, why don't you coordinate better? Okay. Manager Gibson, you'll be calling people from around the room because I spot a lot of our colleagues.
Sure. So we're a little different than in past years, but I do have a number of department heads here. I think I can spot all of them. Starting up front here, and Ann Cuspa is not a department head, but thank you, Ann, for being here. Housing Nantucket. We've got Jeff Carlson, our Natural Resources Director. Jeff did a great job last night at the Wisconsin Civic Association annual meeting. Thank you, Jeff. Mike Alvarez is the town's new Chief Technology Officer. Shanta Blois Murphy is our Culture and Tourism Director. Chief Pittman is our Police Chief, Bill Pittman. And I want to say a little something about Bill Pittman. He is retiring, as we know, near the end of this year. And I really want to thank and recognize him for his work for the town. This is many, many more thank yous are going to be coming, but this may be his potential last forum before you all. So I would really like to thank him and recognize him for his work for the town. Feel free to clap. Thank you. Public Health Director, Roberto Santamaria. Director of the Water Department, Mark Willett. Director of Municipal Finance, Brian Turbot. Let's see here. Leslie Snell, our Director of Planning. Mike Burns, our Transportation Program Planner, Manager. Is that Paul Murphy next to you? Paul, I'm going on the other side of Leslie now. Paul Murphy, our Building Commissioner. Holly Backus, Preservation Planner. Amanda Perry, our Human Resources Director. Mike Cranston, our Fire Chief. Tucker Holland, our Housing Director. David Gray, our Sewer Director. Is there anybody else back there? Oh, Lauren Sinatra, thank you. Our Energy Coordinator Extraordinaire. Rick Sears, Assistant Town Manager. Okay. I'm distracted now. Noah Carberg, our Airport Manager. Florencia Rulo, our Communications Manager. Who else is back there? Nancy Holmes, Town Clerk. Kamal McCarthy, Dr. Kamal McCarthy, DEI Director. Is that it? If there's anybody that I missed, stick your hand up.
Town Manager,
Okay.
since you addressed him as doctor, may I express my appreciation to the town for supporting our employees working on advanced degrees and certifications. I believe we have two doctors.
We have a pending doctor, Santa Maria, Health Director. Yes, he has a survey out.
It-
Lauren?
To discuss the wind turbines with myself and Holly Backus. We're going to stick around. We know this is a complicated issue. Years of work went into this effort, and there are many more developments to come. And Holly and I can explain what our current efforts and our objectives are. So we're going to hang around and answer questions, and happy to have that conversation.
That's good of you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Lauren and Holly and Matt as well have really worked hard on a lot of these wind turbine issues. So I was going to proceed, if that's okay, Mr. Moderator, with just
It's your show.
Okay, thank you. With an overview of current pending, recently completed big projects and initiatives and some general updates. I was going to start with a quick overview of the 2023 annual town meeting. Town meeting is one of the most important things that a municipality in Massachusetts does annually. Our fiscal 24, that's the current fiscal year that we are in now, general fund operating budget is $116 million. That's an increase of just over 10% from fiscal 23. The fiscal 24 enterprise fund operating budgets are total $56 million. We have 5 enterprise funds: sewer, solid waste, our island home, water, and airport. Thank you. Fiscal 24 Health and Human Services, we appropriated $650,000 to allocate among a variety of health and human services organizations throughout the island, plus $175,000 from a special stabilization fund for substance abuse, which is funded by the marijuana tax. We had a little over 17 million, almost $18 million in general fund capital projects in fiscal 24 through Article 10 of the town meeting warrant, and those are funded through a variety of free cash, prior year appropriations, debt and or capital exclusions. Enterprise fund capital projects totaled $65.9 million. We had several standalone debt exclusion questions. Debt exclusion questions require both a vote of town meeting and an election vote. All but one of those passed. The one that didn't pass at town meeting, but did pass subsequently at the election. So we have one of the votes necessary, may be added to the November 7th special town meeting. The select board will be discussing that in the next few weeks. And CPC, community preservation projects, totaled $4.2 million. If anybody has any questions about the debt exclusions, I'd be happy to go over them, but I'm not going to get through all of them right at the moment. Other articles of note at town meeting and or that generated a lot of discussion at either select board and or finance committee or at town meeting included Article 18, which is the $6.5 million override for affordable housing that Brooke mentioned. Article 35 was a citizen petition to dedicate short-term rental revenue to an affordable housing stabilization fund. That did not pass. Articles 58, 59, and 61, all citizen articles, all related to short-term rentals. None of those passed. Article 76 was an outdoor lighting bylaw. That was a citizen petition that passed. And Article 81, a citizen petition, seeks to change the form of government from select board to town council. That passed, and we are in the process of putting together a town council study committee to look at that. There's a lot of follow-up that goes into the town meeting. Once it's concluded, home rule petitions get sent up to the state. Bylaws go to the attorney general. There's a lot of procurement that has to happen with the various projects. Work groups and staff and otherwise need to get set up to help with implementation and or outreach as needed for some of what passed at town meeting. Our 2024 annual town meeting is tentatively scheduled right now for Tuesday, May 7th. The select board will be finalizing that date soon, but it's pretty much a go. Current town issues. I won't go too deep into housing because Brooke really covered a lot there, but there is a lot going on with housing. The Affordable Housing Trust has a number of initiatives underway, including the projects that Brooke mentioned: 31 Fairgrounds, Tacoma Green, Waite Drive, 136 and 138 Orange Street, Vesper Lane, Richmond. The town has been renting year-round rentals as we can for municipal employee housing. And that is presenting its own challenges with maintenance and management issues for which we do not currently have appropriate staffing. We're working on that. We're working on year-round and seasonal housing initiatives, community housing, affordable housing. In fiscal 23 and fiscal 24, each of those years, the town appropriated $1 million for town employee rental housing assistance. It turned out to be a program that was extremely difficult to lay out into a comprehensive policy. It also required union approval, which we ultimately did not get. There just turned out to be way too many questions. So we're now working on reallocating those funds to a different housing related initiative. We have a lot of hiring issues. I'm sure people have probably read about some of those. Hiring is becoming very, very difficult due to cost of living and housing issues. We're working on recruitment strategies, retention initiatives, such as remote work, commuting, succession planning. We have some potential out of the box ideas. Currently, we have about a 16% vacancy rate in town government right now. A lot of people are really stretched thin doing a lot of different things. Major positions either just recently hired or are underway include the Chief Technology Officer. As I mentioned, Mike has filled that. The DPW Director position is now filled. The individual filling that hasn't quite started yet. Solid Waste Manager has finally been filled, and Police Chief search is well underway. We have a lot of activities going on with coastal resilience planning for sea level rise and climate change, sustainability. There are many, many things at play here, different thinking, operationalization of certain standards for specific types of projects and operations, renewable energy, climate action plan. We have a new position of sustainability program manager that's been filled with our former coastal resiliency coordinator, Vince Murphy, and his position has been filled by Leah Hill in natural resources. We have long-term solid waste planning going on, lots of things going on there, waste reduction initiatives, landfill operations, planning for our new landfill operator contract, which expires currently in 2025. The Select Board Strategic Plan, Dawn mentioned those things. We have 5 focus areas there. All of them have specific goals. Earlier in June, the Select Board met jointly with the Planning Board, Planning Commission, Conservation Commission, Finance Committee, and Capital Program Committee. And they all reviewed the plan, received a bit of input from it so that everybody's hopefully on the same page. And the board has its annual retreat scheduled to update the strategic plan in October. Our DEI strategic plan is complete and we are currently working on implementation. We had a kind of a mini internal retreat yesterday. Thank you. I'll add them. We have a lot of large projects on the horizon, and those include things like our island home. We have, and the senior center. We have a work group working on those, but those are massive projects. DPW facility, very large project, working on finalizing where that will go right at the moment. Seasonal employee housing, Surfside area water main extension, and then some associated transportation improvements in the Surfside area. The sewer master plan, coastal resiliency projects. The coastal resiliency plan alone has hundreds of millions of dollars of projects in it. Some of those can be funded maybe through grants. Some are way off, but they're going to cost money, a lot of money. Baxter Road is a significant project to the relocation of Baxter Road, or alternative access is more appropriate. We are having a lot of challenges right now with facilities maintenance and vehicle maintenance. Not things that is totally uncommon in towns, but we have so many buildings out there remotely that we need to centralize, and a central municipal facility is a potential additional very significant large project. So we're spending a lot of time working on all of those things, plus the day-to-day. We have a number of outreach efforts underway. First off, we've established a communications division in town administration. That is Florencia's new division. And she's got a helper, Haley Cook, our public outreach coordinator. We have a lot of outreach efforts underway. We have a monthly town manager e-newsletter. Hopefully everybody here subscribes to that. I give a little quick radio update of what the select board did at its Wednesday meetings on Thursday morning. We are have some social media platforms that we're regularly posting information to, including Twitter, Instagram, the town website, and the new platform Threads. We have coverage of NCT of a variety of public meetings. And this isn't really an outreach thing, but I just thought I'd mention it. We have an upcoming joint select board meeting with the Vineyard Select Boards on Thursday, July 20th at 4 o'clock. It will be a Zoom meeting. The board had a meeting with those Vineyard groups a little over a year ago. They were talked about some steamship issues, and everybody thought it was so great that they wanted to do it again, maybe annually. And it's been really hard to get everybody, in person for something like that. There's 6 towns over there, and wrangling them is a challenge. So anyway, that if people are interested in that, we've got a ton of topics that are of maybe mutual interest. I wanted to mention, I did neglect to mention a couple of newer Noah Carberg is a new airport manager. I think I said Leslie and Mike, didn't I? If I. Oh, okay. Thank you. Dawn is just saying I should mention who's new since last year. So Leslie Snell is new since last year. Andrew Vorse retired recently, and Leslie has replaced him as the planning director. And Mike Cranston, our fire chief, replaced retiring fire chief from a year ago, Steve Murphy. And Noah replaced retired airport manager Tom Rafter. Thank you. And I'm happy to take questions, or if any of my people are available for a question that's more appropriate to them. Thank you.
And we will recognize you in just a second. I do participate, and every time I ask for help from the town, it's given not only willingly, but friendly. And I'm greatly appreciative of the support that we get. By the way, my most recent venture was to work in the Town of Nantucket Scholarship Committee. And for those of you who sent checks with your real estate taxes, thank you. We also got the donations from the cannabis farms and distributed $48,000 just earlier or late last week. So the town does pull together, and it's with the help of a great number of people. So we have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I wanted to speak to the hiring process. I understand that it is very difficult to find people and to have people, and we've been lucky. I wanted to talk about the police chief's position. I wanted to know specifically what criteria left Jack Moran out of the interview process.
Thank you.
It would be very, very inappropriate, and I don't know any town that would speak to the specific candidates who have or have not been participating in a process. We have a robust process underway right now. I'm going to let Brooke speak on it as well. She's on a work group. We received over 40 applications. A good number of them are very well qualified, experienced chiefs in towns in Massachusetts and elsewhere. There are minimum qualifications posted on the website. I encourage everybody to check it out. We just updated the website, and it's a process. So people drop out, people get reviewed through a very specific process, and it's on the town website. Brooke?
Thank you. Questions?
Lee, I
I'm sorry.
just wanted to add, I'm on the search committee. It is a very structured process, and all of the criteria are on the website, as Libby said. And the one thing that I learned in this process is that the state of Massachusetts passed police reform very recently. And so credentialing for folks who are active in law enforcement under the new police reform is part of the minimum criteria that are established on as part of the search. So there's been a huge change in law enforcement in recent years in Massachusetts, and that is a critical element to our evaluation of candidates in the process so far. So I hope that is helpful, and there will be regular updates. And I just also want to reiterate that protecting the privacy of people who are applying for any position in town is really critical, which is why these things the process happens the way it happens, because that's how human resources works, right, Amanda? that we're protecting the privacy of all the candidates as well.
Thank you. Now, additional questions? Charlie Walters.
This has been touched on briefly a couple of times this morning, but I wonder if any of the town officials here can comment further with specifics, if possible, on the town's ongoing efforts to address rising seas downtown.
I'll give it a stab. There again are a number of projects in the coastal resiliency plan. We have a very, very active coastal resiliency advisory committee. They meet regularly. I think who's on there from the board? Matt is on there. Matt, I'm sure will want to speak on this. And they come to the select board on a regular basis and give an update. I think they just gave one last week. And there are a couple of projects in the works. We are hoping to partner with the Land Bank, for example, on design of some coastal resiliency measures along Washington Street. But there's also something in the harbor, the what's it called? The
Which
barrier,
one? Well, Washington Street's is one.
that barrier.
Oh, they were trying to get money for the barrier, flood barrier, some sort of barrier in the harbor to have that studied to see if that's viable. The coastal resiliency was meeting this morning, but I'm here and they didn't have a quorum. So we're meeting again in 2 weeks. It's a very good group. They're tracking everything. I think the one issue that we're going to be doing now is coming forth with capital requests to make sure that we get on the capital agenda, get on the capital budget. So some of these things start to move forward. I think that's one of our next sort of tasks. And it's, how do I say it? It's easy to say, oh, it's in the future, but as we all see right now, it's happening now. We're seeing flooding at times that we've never seen it before. It's happening more often. And I think it's going to take everybody sort of contributing and doing things a little different. And, it's going to take all of us paying some money to address a lot of this. But I think the sooner we can get started and this committee is doing that, the better off we'll be. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Other questions?
I just want to add, in addition to what Matt said, I'm a member of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Commission. And what you should know and what we have done is, after spending substantial amounts for a terrific firm, Arcadis, to give us some help in organizing our priorities, we now have a plan for the town. It's a long-term plan with some immediate steps to take, and we have 40 priorities. So if you take a look at the town website, you can see the priorities that we have. And when you look at that chart, you will see that among those 40 priorities, we have action being taken right now on 10 or 15 of them. But it is a long-term, as Matt said, it's a long-term pull. And but we need people here in town to take a look at that plan and start to take personal steps with your homes and building plans and things like that. But there's a lot going on. I have one question for the town that I've been thinking about for a while, and that is, we have I believe the town is in favor of solar housing or solar roofs, which among our priorities in town is to try to avoid a third undersea cable. And so the town offers a subsidy for people putting solar roofing on, but the subsidy, strangely, is only available to residents. And we non-voting taxpayers, we own most of the homes on the island. Of all of the 10,000 homes on the island, non-voting taxpayers own about 7,000 according to the tax records. So my question is, wouldn't it be a good idea to encourage more solar roofing by giving the same kind of subsidy for non-residents, taxpayers, as we do to the resident taxpayers.
Thank you for that. Our energy coordinator, hi.
Hello, thank you for your question. I'll just say that the town of Nantucket is very proud of our solar rebate program. It's the only program of its kind in the Commonwealth. It is funded by the Nantucket Power Choice Program, which is a municipal electric aggregation program. It is not taxpayer funded. The money is received by a small adder on every participant's electric bill, which comes to 1/10 of a cent. There's only so much money that comes into our coffers every year. And we've already surpassed that this fiscal year. So by limiting the rebate, which is up to $6,000 to year-round residents, we are just breaking even now. So I wish we could. I wish there was more to spread around, but we are prioritizing year-round residents who traditionally need that subsidy more than others to afford solar on their primary homes.
Thank you, Lauren. Oh, you're in danger of me filling the space so that we end on time and not before, but that's not true. Hi, that is a question.
Hello, Burton Balkine. You guys might know me as Spruce. I have a question on the affordable housing front, so I think I'll be directing it to Brooke. And first of all, Brooke, I know how passionate you are about housing. And so anything I say, I'm not slighting you or your work. You're amazing. And I know you care so much about the community. I've known you for a long time. So my comment, and maybe there's a question at the end, is along the lines of the sheriff. Here we are building out the island and at an unprecedented rate, I would argue, especially the big compounds with the pools and all the amenities that go with it. And with that, we need a tremendous workforce to support and maintain those places. Maybe my question is, how in the future are we going to balance trying to get housing for all the people that we want at the same time and keep on increasing the amount of people we need to house? It feels to me as like we're chasing our tail a little bit, and I am not versed in affordable housing also. You might have that answer, you might have thought about it, or maybe you're thinking about it, I don't know. But I just wanted to put that out there and say thank you, Brooke. I know you really care a lot, so.
Thank you. Response?
So I hear a lot from people, if we build affordable housing, we're attracting people to Nantucket. And to Sheriff Perlman's comment earlier, I was actually going to comment on this because I think it's really important to realize how many people are here, they're employed, there's full-time work for them. The economy needs these folks to function, for all of us to experience the things that we want to experience, like having health care, having someone to clean our house, having someone to serve us coffee, having someone to clean out the sewer clog on our street. All of these jobs exist. We're not building affordable housing and attracting people from America. We're housing people who are under or illegally housed currently, and that speaks to what Sheriff Perlman said. There are people being evicted out of housing all the time because it's substandard. The Board of Health sees this come across their plate. We have a big question to answer in housing, which is, what is the appropriate balance of bedrooms for people that need to work here, support our government, support our economy, make our lives here function, versus people who visit here? The problem doesn't come from people who we're building affordable housing for, attainable housing for, if we see there's a problem in growth of the number of people here. It's an overall picture of where are we going as a community and how big can we afford to become? And that's the conversation that we need to have on a strategic level as a community. And I don't know, Manhattan became a Manhattan by going up. We've agreed we're not going to do that, but we're not even close to the potential build out of existing zoning we have on Nantucket. So the question We have a big philosophical and values-based question that we need to have in this community. What we're doing in affordable and attainable housing is catching up to the need that already exists. And one of the goals that I have that I've thought about a lot as we've built this momentum toward housing people who are already here is what do we do with the substandard and terrible housing that they're living in now? And how do we prevent that housing from being refilled with more people? Can we create programs to bring substandard housing up to code, to lock it in for year-round occupancy and for workforce occupancy and perpetuity? Those are the questions we can now really address in full force because we have the funding stream that we need to create the programs to do those things. And by the way, people don't file complaints with the Board of Health about their housing because if they do, they become homeless. And that is a huge problem. If we actually enforced our health code in housing, we would have an economic and homeless crisis that nobody really understands. And that is the conversation we need to have in the years going forward. So Spruce, I applaud you for asking the question, but I want to remind you, these people have jobs. They are part of our community. They're critical to our community, and we need to house them safely. And then we need to have that bigger conversation about where are we going as an island? And I want to be part of that conversation. That's why I'm here.
Thank
So
you.
I hope that helps.
Thank you. All right, we're going to do that big time because this has been an extraordinary meeting, extraordinarily informative for me, and I hope for you. Let me just put in a plug for the Civic League, and then we'll have our motion of appreciation. The Civic League has 25 members, and only 25 members. They are the local area associations. I'm a member of the Nantucket Town Association. I spot people from other associations. Some of you have identified that. If you want to participate, join your local association. The associations pay the Civic League, which is how we get our budget, $5 per member. And so I'm encouraging you to work with your association. Now, Chair Hillgate and Manager Gibson, this has been an extraordinary morning. Thank you. And thank you for your people. And thank you for those of you who've answered questions and for those of you who asked them. So let me just say hands together in thanks. We are adjourned.
May I just thank the Civic League for hosting this event?
You
I
certainly
think
may.
that it's always a very
Presidents Morrison and Stott are in the back.
successful, well-attended event. And if anyone is too shy to ask a question here, all of our email addresses are on the town website, and feel free to ask individually anytime.
Be like, I told you. See,